The audience was laughing. They expected another punchline. But what Steve Harvey did next silenced the entire studio. He lowered the microphone. His signature smile faded. For the first time in 40 years of television, Steve Harvey looked like he didn't know what to say. The cameras kept rolling, but the show had stopped. Something had just happened that no one in that room was prepared for. This wasn't about a game. It wasn't about points or prizes. This was about something far more powerful. And in that moment, Steve Harvey became more than a host. He became a witness to a truth so profound, it would change everyone in that studio and millions watching at home. What happened in the next 5 minutes defied every rule of television. No script could have written it. No producer could have planned it. Because what this family said about love didn't just answer a game show question. It revealed something about the human heart that Steve Harvey and everyone watching would never forget. The Peterson family had driven 14 hours from a small town in Tennessee to be on Family Feud. 5 generations stood at that podium. Margaret, the 84-year-old grandmother with silver hair and kind eyes. Her daughter Linda, 62, who never stopped holding her mother's hand. Linda's son Robert, 41, a construction worker with calloused hands and a gentle smile. Robert's daughter Jessica, 19, home from college for this moment. And tucked between them, 7-year-old Emma, Margaret's great-great-granddaughter, who kept looking up at the game board with wide, wondering eyes. They weren't the flashiest family. They didn't have matching outfits or choreographed dances. What they had was something you could feel the moment they walked on stage. A quietness. A togetherness. The kind of bond that doesn't need words. Steve noticed it immediately. He'd hosted thousands of families, but there was something different here. The way Margaret touched each person as they took their places. The way they stood just a little closer than most families do. As if proximity itself was a kind of language. "Welcome to Family Feud!" Steve's voice boomed through the studio. The audience applauded. The Petersons smiled, but there was something behind those smiles. Something Steve couldn't quite name yet. The game began normally enough. Fast money questions. Survey says. The usual rhythm of television. The Petersons were good but not great. They laughed at Steve's jokes. They high-fived when they got answers right. Everything was going exactly as it should. Then came the question that changed everything. We asked 100 married couples, what's the secret to a love that lasts a lifetime? It was meant to be light. Funny. The kind of question that gets answers like, separate bathrooms, or, she lets me watch football. Steve was already preparing his response. His eyebrows were raised. The audience was ready to laugh. Margaret stepped up to answer. At 84, she moved slowly, but there was a steadiness to her. She looked at the microphone, then at Steve, then back at her family. Emma squeezed her hand. Remembering that goodbye might come tomorrow, Margaret said. Her voice was soft but clear. So you love them like it's the last time. Every single time. The studio went quiet. Not the planned quiet of dramatic television. The real quiet. The kind that happens when something true enters a room full of pretense. Steve's smile faltered. His hand lowered the microphone slightly. Say that again, he said. But it wasn't the host asking. It was the man. Margaret took a breath. My husband Tom and I were married for 58 years. He passed 4 months ago. Her voice didn't break, but something in it carried weight. Every morning he'd wake up before me. And every morning, for 58 years, he'd kiss my forehead and say I love you like it's the first time and the last time. Linda squeezed her mother's hand tighter. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. Even little Emma understood that something important was being said. The last morning, Margaret continued, he did the same thing. Kissed my forehead. Said those words. Then he went to make coffee. And he didn't come back. The cameras captured everything. Steve Harvey frozen. The audience silent. Somewhere in the control room, a producer was probably panicking because this wasn't following the show's format. But no one stopped it. Because what was happening was bigger than television. Steve Harvey did something he'd never done in 40 years. He put down the microphone. Not handed it off. Put it down. On the floor. And he walked away from his mark. He walked straight to Margaret. The cameras followed him, but barely. This wasn't choreographed. This was instinct. "Ma'am," Steve said, and his voice cracked just slightly. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry." Margaret looked up at him. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, but in that moment she seemed like the tallest person in the room. "Don't be sorry," she said. "Be grateful. I got 58 years of that kind of love. Most people don't get 58 days. Subscribe and leave a comment because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead." Steve Harvey stood there. This man who built a career on quick wit and perfect timing couldn't find words. He just nodded. And then he did something else unprecedented. He took off his suit jacket. His signature gray jacket that cost more than most people's monthly rent. And he draped it over Margaret's shoulders. "You keep this," he said. "You keep this and you remember that what you and Tom had, that's what the rest of us are trying to find." The audience started to cry. Not politely. Not quietly. Real crying. The kind that comes from recognition. Because everyone in that room either had love like that, lost love like that, or was desperately searching for love like that. But Margaret wasn't done. She looked at her family, then back at Steve. "Can I tell you the rest?" Steve nodded. He didn't pick up the microphone. He didn't return to his mark. He just stood there, next to this family, and listened. "Tom didn't just love me like it was the last time," Margaret said. "He loved everyone like that. Our daughter Linda. Our grandson Robert. He'd never end a phone call without saying I love you. Never left the house without hugging everyone. Even strangers. Especially strangers." Linda spoke up then, her voice thick with emotion. "Dad used to say that love isn't a limited resource. You don't run out by giving it away. You run out by holding it back." Robert nodded. "He taught me that every interaction might be someone's last good memory of you. So make it count. Make it kind. Make it love." Jessica, the college student, wiped her eyes. "Grandpa Tom paid for my college. But not with money. He didn't have much money. He paid with time. Every week he'd call me. 3 hours sometimes. Just talking. About life. About love. About becoming who you're meant to be." And then little Emma, 7 years old with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, looked up at Steve Harvey and said something that would break the internet within hours. "Great-great-grandpa Tom told me that when someone loves you, you feel it in your bones. And I still feel him. In my bones." The studio erupted. Not in applause. In something rawer. The opposing family left their podium and walked across the stage. They hugged the Petersons. All of them. Strangers embracing strangers because grief and love are universal languages. Steve Harvey, who had interviewed presidents and celebrities, who had stood on stages around the world, who had been unshakable through decades of television, stood there with tears streaming down his face. Behind the scenes, Steve made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. He turned to the cameras. To the control room. To everyone watching. "We're not finishing this game," he said. His voice was firm. Final. "I don't care about the score. I don't care about the prize money. This family just taught us something worth more than anything we could give them." The producers were scrambling. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't how television works. But Steve Harvey wasn't asking permission. He was claiming a moment. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. His personal card. Not the show's. His. "Margaret," he said, "you call me. Anytime. For anything. You and your family, you're part of mine now." Then he did something even more extraordinary. He looked at the audience. At the cameras. At everyone watching. How many of you are taking love for granted right now? How many of you have someone in your life that you assume will always be there? And how many of you are gonna get a phone call one day, or walk into a room one day, and they won't be there anymore? The silence was deafening. Because everyone knew the answer. Tom understood something most of us forget. Steve continued. Love isn't about forever. It's about right now. It's about this moment. This conversation. This hug. This I love you that you might not get to say tomorrow. He turned back to Margaret. You said Tom loved like every goodbye might be the last one. That's not sad. That's the secret. That's what we're all searching for. That's the answer to the question. Margaret smiled. A real smile. The kind that carries 58 years of memories. The secret to love that lasts, she said, is understanding that it doesn't. Not in the way we think. Bodies fail. Time runs out. But love that's given completely, honestly, every single day like it's the last day, that love never gets old. It just becomes part of everything. But this is the moment no one in the studio and no one watching at home ever saw coming. Steve Harvey knelt down. This 60-year-old man in expensive shoes and tailored pants knelt on the game show floor in front of an 84-year-old widow. Thank you, he whispered. But the microphones caught it. The cameras caught it. The world caught it. For what? Margaret asked. For reminding me what I'm living for, Steve said. The family surrounded him. All 5 generations. They formed a circle right there on stage. Margaret placed her hand on Steve's head like a blessing. Linda and Robert put their hands on his shoulders. Jessica and Emma held his hands. And for 30 seconds, on live television, they just stood there. Connected. Human. Real. When they finally broke apart, Steve stood slowly. He picked up his microphone. He took a breath. And he looked directly into the camera. I've hosted this show for years. I've given away cars and money and trips. But what this family gave us today, you can't put a price on it. He paused. The entire studio waited. The Peterson family wins. Not because of points. Because of truth. And their prize is this: we're gonna make sure Tom's legacy lives on. Every act of love. Every hug. Every I love you like it's the last time. That's gonna be the Tom Peterson way of living. And we're all gonna try to live it. The audience stood. All of them. A standing ovation that lasted 3 minutes. The opposing family joined in. The crew joined in. Even the stone-faced producers in the control room were wiping their eyes. Margaret took off Steve's jacket and tried to hand it back. He gently pushed it toward her. No, ma'am. You keep that. And when you wear it, you remember that Tom's love didn't end with him. It's here. In your family. In this moment. In everyone who heard your story today. The show ended there. No final round. No prize reveal. Just Steve Harvey standing with a family who taught millions of people something they desperately needed to learn. Love never gets old when you love like there's no tomorrow. Share and subscribe because this story should never be forgotten. 3 weeks later, Steve Harvey posted a photo on social media. It was Margaret, wearing his gray jacket, standing in front of a community center in Tennessee. The caption read, "The Tom Peterson Center for Living Love, where we teach people to love like it's the first time and the last time. Thank you, Margaret, for showing us the way." The jacket became a symbol. Not of wealth or status, but of connection. Of the moment when television stopped being entertainment and became transformation. Steve Harvey still hosts Family Feud. He still makes jokes and pulls faces and gets the audience laughing. But those who know him say something changed that day. He hugs a little longer now. Says, "I love you," a little more often. Ends every show with a reminder. Tell the people you love that you love them. You might not get another chance. The Peterson family still watches the show. Every episode. Margaret says it's her way of staying connected to that moment, when her husband's love reached beyond his life and touched the world. And somewhere, in a small town in Tennessee, there's a community center where people learn to love the Tom Peterson way. Like it's the first time. Like it's the last time. Every single time. Because that's the secret. Not that love lasts forever, but that love given completely, in every moment, becomes eternal. Steve Harvey learned that day what we all need to remember: the greatest thing we'll ever give isn't what's in our wallets. It's what's in our hearts. And sometimes, the greatest gift we can receive is the reminder that love, when given fully, never dies. It just changes form. From a man to his wife. From a wife to her family. From a family to a stranger in a studio. From that stranger to millions watching at home. Tom Peterson never made it to Family Feud. But his love did. And it changed everything.